This week on In Post, a little masking work with two images of the Oceanside Harbor. Hi everyone, my name's Scott Davenport and welcome back to In Post, where I take an image, usually the one that we've done in the field, and take you through the processing of it. And that's exactly what we're going to do today with two images from the Oceanside Harbor. Now, I mentioned in the field episode, one of the problems that you have when shooting at something like a harbor is motion. You know, you're doing a long exposure, the boats are going to be bobbing up and down in the water, and that will introduce blur. And so I tried an experiment when shooting is, in addition to taking my long exposure to get nice smooth water and some softer skies with clouds moving through it and whatnot, I also took a shot at a high ISO value. And that was to freeze the motion, really collect more light, make the camera more sensitive to light so that the shutter speed was much slower. And the idea is to blend those two together in post to get an image that has the best of both worlds. And it turned out pretty good. So let's get over to the computer and I'll show you how this came together. Okay, so we've got two photos that we're going to work with here. So here's the base image that I'm going to start with. You can see here, just under the histogram, I've got ISO 50, but a whopping 40-second exposure. And I'll show what the problems with that are in a minute. But just spent a few minutes in the basic module, setting a few things, exposure, contrast. There's nothing too exciting here, just tweaking things to make sure I liked what I had in the image, and also setting the profile corrections for the camera. So you can see this is what came out of the camera, so a little bit warped, a little bit dull on the colors, and this is what I've tweaked in Lightroom. Now the problem here is if we zoom in to say this area of the boats, you can see all this motion here, right? I mean, this was a 40-second exposure. So these boats are bobbing up and down all over the place in the water, and they all are going to be blurry like this. Even in the background here, in front of the restaurant, you can see the fence is fine and the building is fine, but all these boats back here are just moving all over the place. So what I did then was take another frame, same exact scene, same exact time. The difference here is I bumped the ISO all the way up to 1250. Now it still came in a little dark, but as opposed to going higher and higher with the ISO, it introduced a lot of noise, and I'll show you that in a moment. But the good news is that gave me, less than a second, 2/5 of a second exposure, and that freezes the boats. So if I zoom back in here, we can see, this boat is very crisp, it's very clear. There's a lot of noise though, it's even more obvious here. Look at this, a terrible amount of noise. We'll deal with that here in Lightroom, and then be able to take these boats that are nice and still and fuse it together with the previous image. So again, I've got the lens correction set to enable the profiles there, and what I do in the basic module is I've set the white balance and tint to be the same as my previous image. So you have 5500, -15. Do the same thing here. So whites are going to be just about the same everywhere else. From here, I just start playing with the exposure, and I'm going to crank this up, to a certain point, right about there. It looks good. And I'm watching the histogram, and why I'm watching that, I'm comparing it to my previous photo. So you can see here, I've got a spike of blue on the upper end here, nice bright blue sky, of course, and some peaks and valleys in the middle. Left arrow over the other one. And now I've got roughly the same thing. Not everything is identical, but generally speaking, things look pretty good. So now to deal with this problem, the noise. So underneath the detail pane, there is a noise reduction section. And I've already set this. I'll turn this back on, and you can see now all that noise is taken care of. I'll turn it off before, turn it on after. And all I did was I started with just the luminance, because this is really where all the noise is. There's not too much color noise. And color's already popped up to 25, which helps. It's kind of default turned on there. But once I pop the luminance up halfway, the sides of this boat and these letters are very nice and smooth, but they've lost a little bit of their crispness, and that's where the detail slider comes in. And I found that for this image, just putting it at roughly the same setting as the luminance noise reduction gave me a good balance between the two. This is still a little noisy, but I don't want to push it farther because then I really start to lose detail. It gets softer and softer, and if I can overcompensate, I start to get some artifacts on the side of the boat. And I was happy with things around halfway for both. So now that I have this image and my base image, I'll select both of these and bring them into the perfect photo suite. And the idea is I'm going to use this as my main image, where I've got nice blues, nice smooth silky water, and a decent sky. And I'll take the boats from this image, which are much crisper and frozen, to come up with a final photo. Here the two layers are loaded into perfect layers. On the top layer I have the nicer of the two images, I'll say. Nice silky water. Silky water. This is the silky image, good color in the sky, but the boats are all in motion. And then on the lower layer I have the higher ISO shot, which has crisp boats, but dull color and more, visible ripples and things like that in the water. So what we're going to do is use the masking brush to reveal this lower layer by punching a hole into this upper layer. And it works very simply. Grab the masking brush, have it set to paint out, and I'll make the brush size a little bigger with my right bracket, shift right bracket, make the feather a little larger, and really just paint through, right? So I'm painting through here, and you can see that this boat is becoming much crisper. And let me zoom in so you can get a really good look at it here. Zoom this down, maybe shift bracket, decrease that feather. And right through here, I'll just paint through. And I'm revealing the nice sharp boat underneath. I did do this all through the image. And when you get to areas that are stationary, like this red house, I could paint through this boat here, but I go to the red building and it's getting a little duller because the lower layer has a dull color to it. I want to avoid that. Oops, undo a couple more. There we go. And just get the boats themselves. Something else to watch for are things like antenna on the boat. So as I make this boat crisp, also got to go up into this area here to grab that antenna. And in the skyline, there's similar things there too. This antenna is fuzzy and blurry. But if I paint up and through, notice that either the sky is getting dull because I'm revealing that duller lower layer. So here's where the perfect brush is handy. So edge detection, turn that on, X key to switch to paint back in. So I can paint back in the area of the sky on either side of that antenna. Now I have to do this through the entire photo over in here. The reflections don't matter as much because those can be soft and those can be fuzzy, and that's totally fine, but just the boats. And to save a little time on the video, let me paste what I did. And so there we go. So now all of the boats are nice and crisp, and I still have nice smooth water and smooth skies. The last thing, of course, is to add a little stylization. And I've done that here. I took these two layers and said, give me a new stamped layer. That was created right here. If I turn that on, here's the final product. I deepen the blues of the sky a little bit, add a little crispness to the boats themselves. And I might as well just show you that really quick. Let me double click on the effects line. So in effects, just a handful of filters added. First I got dynamic contrast, and this is a slightly tailored version of natural. Bumped the smalls up a little bit and brought down the mediums, and just painted things in here to the boats only to give them a little crispness and pop so they jump off those soft waters and soft sky. The photo filter is what gives it this bluish, purplish tone. And you can see the mask here. Let me turn on the mask with Control M. That this is being painted away from the boats, applied at full strength to the sky, but kind of partially applied to the water. That's more easily seen if I switch to the grayscale mask. So you can see this hard black mask, removing the filter from the buildings and the boats entirely. I don't want the boats to have this, odd, bluish purplish tone to them. And on the water, it was just too much to have that entire photo filter making this water super purple. That just didn't look natural. And last but not least, the tone enhancer. This is just for a little more detail right here through the boats again, so you can see the mask is just copy and paste from dynamic contrast. So in the end all, we took these two images, blended them together. So we got boats without motion blur and nice silky water and smooth skies. And then added a little bit of stylization to bring some of that blue hour feel back to the overall shot. So that's the end of it. The main thing to really you have to combat is the noise. And so I could see if I had to shoot at something like 6400 ISO, things would have gotten more difficult. Yes, you can crank the noise reduction up higher and higher and higher, but you will lose detail, and so lines and crispness in some of the angles on the boats wouldn't be there, and that wouldn't be good. So there's certainly a balancing act to this, and probably only so far that you can push it. But if you've got a camera that's working good in low light, where you've got excellent noise reduction software, I was quite happy with what Lightroom gave me there. You can do this, and just get a little forethought when you're shooting, a little bit of masking work in post, and you're good to go. So I guess that's really the tip of the week here, is with the ISO, using these higher ISO shots to freeze motion when it suits your overall scene. That is it for this week in post. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you liked it, tell a friend. I'd love to see more people watching these, interacting, sharing their work, asking questions, and just hopefully we're all improving our photography along the way. Until next time, my name's Scott Davenport. Thanks.